And welcome back, everybody. We are here for our second stream match of today for the World Cup of Pokemon VGC, hosted by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato. I myself am Costa, and I am now joined by the ever so lovely Gabby Snyder. How are you doing, Gabby?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good, honestly. That was a really fun match previously, and congrats to China. I hear that they're well on their way to making it to the next stage in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. They have been at least the first team on stream right now, I think, that have been able to progress straight on to top 16, the next stage of this World Cup. So huge props to them being able to do that in week 2, as we are going to be going over to the second match of today, which is going to be between Ireland and Malaysia, as we're going to go ahead have a bit of an insight into the current group standings and situations, as Malaysia and Ireland right now. Malaysia is first. They did win 6-2 to Guatemala in week 1, whilst the United States and Ireland actually drew 4-4. So of course this means that Ireland really needs the win, or at least as many points as they can, because the current situation isn't the best for them. As we're going to go over to the next screen so you can all check out the situation between these two. Ireland is currently losing 7-0 to Malaysia, which of course does mean Malaysia has more than gone ahead and won this week in this scenario.
Yeah, I think it was either you or Stefan made a comment earlier that Ireland really needs to win for the morale at this point.
Yeah.
Losing 7-0, I mean, even if a majority of the games were the 2-1 loss as opposed to a 2-0, can be really disheartening for the team. I mean, that could be just like bad luck across the board. That could be just being outplayed across the board. And sometimes it's that last win that just gives you that little bit of hope. Like, all right, going into next week, we are going to turn this around. We aren't going to get the 0-8 sweep. So I think a lot is riding on Patrick Donegan's shoulders going into this match, whereas Wahidi on Malaysia's side of the field, probably feeling a bit more comfortable knowing that, whatever happens in this match, not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. So two very different mindsets, I think, coming into play this game right now. And I'm very curious to see if we're going to see Patrick, make some of those strong predictions to try and win the game, given that there is so much on the line.
Yeah, and Patrick has a lot of experience in these scenarios. I've known him for a bit of time now, and he's always such a great manager. He's always such a great person to try to interact with. He will try to go above and beyond for his teammates. So, and of course, I do know that he is a great player in his own right, as he's got some very good accomplishments there. Top 32 of the Oceania Internationals. He was the Boston Open runner-up back in 2015, and top 8 Philadelphia Regional. So he's definitely got a lot of experience behind him going into this, playing in real life events for so long as well.
Yeah, and the team, I think, is one that Patrick's going to be comfortable with because it is built around Groudon, which was the restricted Pokemon of choice in some of those years all the way back, in past formats of old, so to say. And I really do like how well balanced this team is on paper, since not only do you have Groudon with the sunlight, you have Incineroar and Charizard to take advantage of that. Incineroar just to disrupt your opponent in general, as we've seen it do many times over the years as well. But then you also have this nice bulky sort of core of Serena, Feeny, and Porygon 2 to respond to whatever threats your opponent is going to bring. And in Patrick's case, I'm excited to see what Wahidi is going to bring to this next game, because again, as there isn't as much on the line for Malaysia, we might see some interesting techs as we go over to look at Wahidi's profile.
Yeah, as we're going to be seeing Wahidi go for the Zacian. So I was going to say there's a lot of room for creativity, but then of course we do have Zacian, and it seems like Wahidi's focused more on the team composition's counterparts, that being that Cantonian Weezing and the Milotic, Gabby.
Yeah, and bringing Cantoni and Weezing without the Regigigas is something we saw James Beck do it back in Players Cup 4, I believe. And it certainly is an interesting Pokemon to have. Normally you bring it with neutralizing gas to turn off Regigigas' slow start ability, making it one of the most powerful Titans of the Hoenn/Sinnoh region. But in this case, the Cantoni and Weezing most likely going to be trying to turn off abilities such as Intimidate from opposing Incineroars maybe, or, possibly even some... oh my gosh, I'm blanking on Zacian's ability, but the Intrepid Sword to stop those attack boosts and all that. So it's a really interesting composition, and it's a unique tech, and I'm very curious to see if Wahidi is going to have the option to play it in this upcoming match.
Yeah, and Wahidi doesn't have as much in real life experience as, of course, Patrick, although they have gotten 2 top 8s of the Malaysia Opens. So a bit more of an interesting scenario, of course. So this means that there's not as much pressure, both because of the result, but also in this matchup going into the match versus Patrick for Wahidi there. They're just going to go ahead, play their heart out, and do the best that they can in this scenario.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this match. We have the benefit of watching this game from Patrick's perspective, and as a result, we get a sneak peek of some of the items featured on his team. And, true to the format, we see that Charizard right up top with a Choice Scarf. And I don't know about you, Casa, but I've been seeing a lot more of these Choice Scarf Pokemon popping up recently to try and catch the opponent by surprise. In this case, a Charizard with the Choice Scarf should be able to outspeed Zacian and go for a knockout right away with a very powerful fire type attack. So already Patrick has some very unique options from Team Preview.
Yeah, exactly that. It makes a lot of sense. You're able to, like you said, Gabby, outspeed the Zacians. You've got the solar power boosted by the sun right next to Groudon. Of course, bringing in with the Drought ability. And then you could, for example, lead with a Charizard Groudon and then immediately switch that Groudon out for the Tsurena. You could block all priority moves and essentially just deal so much damage with Charizard. That's what Charizard essentially does with its hidden ability. It just goes for maximum potential, accompanied by that Choice Scarf, can be such a huge threat in the current meta.
Yeah, I think some people forget this sometimes, but solar-powered G-Max Charizard was actually banned for a while in some of the earlier formats, and that's exactly why. Even though the Gigantamax factor is not a factor within the Series 10 metagame, that Charizard is still going to be doing tons and tons of damage, especially when you're weak to Fire-type attacks.
Yeah, as we're going to be seeing the leads right now, like we mentioned, we saw Patrick opt to go for the Charizard and Groudon, whilst over on Wahidi's side, they opt to go for the Cantoni and Weezing, Zacian, and we do see the interaction of that Weezing's neutralizing gas, which does not allow the sun nor solar power to come into effect, accompanied by that Intrepid Sword.
Yeah, I was going to say at the cost of Intrepid Sword, but in this situation, I think that Wahidi is perfectly fine with that trade. The Zacian is still going to be able to do a ton of damage to either of the 2 Pokemon on the field if it decides to remain, but knowing that the Groudon, even though it is going to be slower, could still threaten with something like a Precipice Blades, Charizard's still able to use Fire types attacks, just not getting any boosts for them. I think Zacian's safer spot would be off the field, but it remains, and this could be a big opportunity for Patrick to gain an early advantage.
Yeah, as Porygon 2 is going to be switching in for it. The Zacian goes for the Protect there, and the Charizard tried to corner it down with the Overheat, failed to do so, as we see the Weezing opting to go for the Will-O-Wisp. It wanted to try to reduce that damage output of the Groudon, but it only found a cute little levitating duck in the form of that Porygon 2 there.
I mean, putting a timer of sorts on Porygon 2 is always going to be helpful, since it is probably one of the bulkiest Pokemon and does have access to recover. But in this situation, I think that it was a very passive turn from both these trainers. Knowing that Patrick brought Porygon 2, though, I think says a bit more about Patrick's strategy to go into this game. I think that Patrick is counting on the fact that Porygon 2 is in a position right now where it can go for Trick Room. Then you just get the Groudon out onto the field however possible and start using Precipice Blades for big damage.
Yeah, as the Charizard's just gonna go ahead and attack the Weezing instead, though, dealing so much damage. You show, of course, there's such a show of ferocious power from this Charizard, as the Weezing still clutching and surviving on the field. Goes for the taunt, which will now stop the Porygon 2 from even being able to set up any sort of Trick Room, but also go for any future recovers whilst it's on the field.
Yeah, Taunt is a pretty common move on Weezing, especially in the current format. So I think Patrick was just hoping that one Overheat without the solar power, without the sun, would be enough to KO that Weezing. So good information for both these trainers to go into game 2. Probably would require a bit more maneuvering on Patrick's part, though, just because it is impossible to set Sun up while Weezing is out on the field. Yeah. Fortunately for him, though, since Weezing is in the red, Porygon 2 can go for a attack of its choice to pick up that KO, but you do have to switch out Charizard just because you took the special attack drop from that Overheat, and as a result, you do not want to get locked into that for any period of time.
Yeah, so a bit of a predictable switch in that Wahidi could have, of course, anticipated, but we actually see a double switch from Patrick's side, bringing the Trina next to the Groudon as the Weezing on Wahidi's side opts to go for the Protect. So the Milotic, oh, Dabby, that is a coiling Milotic, which goes ahead and boosts its attack, which is negligible in this situation. Defense +1, but more importantly, that accuracy, and it may be hinting to its moveset as well.
Usually when Milotic carry Coil, they're also carrying a lovely move named Hypnosis, so we'll have to see if that is indeed what this Milotic is going to go for. I think for now, though, Patrick is in a really tough spot, as Groudon is going to be slower than both the Weezing and the Milotic, which means it could be put to sleep, it could be burned by that Weezing again. We saw Wahidi go for that earlier on in the match. It's a tough spot. I think that Patrick was really counting on that Trick Room going through earlier, and is trying to pivot in order to gain momentum back, but the double switch was just too much of a pivot. He really needed that Weezing to go down this turn, or otherwise start dealing damage to Milotic.
Yeah, and the Wahidi opting to go for the correct slot there. It's able to reduce the damage output of this Groudon substantially, landing that Will-O-Wisp, getting the burn. Sure, there's a critical hit on that Weezing, but of course at that HP range does not come into play at all unless it may have gone into the Milotic. But now with Weezing gone, the drought is here, the sun accompanied by it, and this Milotic just wants to go for a second coil and essentially start setting itself up for future turns to being a complete tank.
Yeah, I think that after 2 accuracy boosts, if this Milotic does indeed have Hypnosis, it should be 100% accurate. Yes. I believe it's after 1 accuracy boost. Moves like Muddy Water also start being 100% accurate as well. So if we see additional coils from Milotic, I think that this is more of Wahidi playing towards the end game of a Milotic versus a Serena matchup than anything else. And given that Serena is the only Pokemon that we've seen on Patrick's side of the field who is going to be able to hit that Milotic super effectively, as we do not see the Solar Beam on the Charizard, and nor do we see any electric damage dealing moves on that Porygon 2. That's going to be something really important for Wahidi to plan for in the end game. I like the presence of the Landorus here on the field rather than the Zacian for Wahidi as well, not just because the Zacian would be at a disadvantage because of the weather, but because a Earth Power or a other special attack here against the Groudon is going to do a huge amount of damage when he finally decides to go for it.
Yeah, as it's definitely not going to be going for this turn. Goes for the Protect, whilst the Groudon says it's just going to try to set up right now with the Swords Dance since it can, as the Hypnosis, goes into the Porygon 2 slot, but of course, due to it previously being burned by that Will-O-Wisp from the Weezing, does not fall asleep there, as kind of an awkward situation for Wahidi's Milotic there.
It is, and it's almost a benefit that Wahidi went for the burns on both the Porygon 2 and the Groudon, because at least the Groudon can't go to sleep, and now that we know that the Groudon is also also knows the sword stance, it can raise its attack back up to a point where it's as if the burn did not exist. I'm not sure if Groudon's going to get that opportunity. Again, the Landorus and an Earth Power is going to do more than enough damage to that Groudon to slow things down quite a bit. But if Patrick were to go for something like a Protect plus a Trick Room this play, it's not taunted. Now would be the perfect time to do so.
Ooh, Earth Power goes and charges into that Porygon 2 there, dealing so much damage as the Groudon decides to set itself up for a second Swords Dance in a row. It wants to try to threaten with as much damage as possible. Muddy Water comes out, not quite able to deal damage at all, doesn't pick up any sort of accuracy drops, which it may have been fishing for, whilst the Porygon 2 is going to be able to finally get its Trick Room going, as we do of course see the leftovers being the item choice on that Milotic.
It's unfortunate that now that Trick Room is up, I think Wahidi has put himself in a position where it doesn't necessarily matter as much as it would have in previous turns. The Milotic is more than happy to sit on the field and, heal itself out with the leftovers, go for those Muddy Waters for chip damage. I don't think it's too worried, especially since it has those coil defense boosts. And this Landorus, if the Heat Crash from the Groudon isn't able to take it out, again, should be able to knock out the Groudon on Patrick's side of the field. I think that it's great that Patrick was able to find that Trick Room finally, but Wahidi is still in a position where he has enough momentum on his side of the field to power through the first couple turns of Trick Room at least without much worry.
Yeah, because at this point, the Porygon 2 wants to go for the recover. It just wants to go ahead and get that longevity that it so requires in this matchup. And Muddy Water in the sun is not going to be dealing much damage at all, which it may be wanting to, but what it does want to though do more is get any sort of accuracy drops, which it's able to successfully do so on the Porygon 2, as we see the reveal of the Citrus Berry on the Groudon whilst it was trying to target down that Landorus. And after those two, or should I say now it's +4 stages in attack, it would have been able to pick up the KO in the sun there.
It would have, but how curious is it that the Milotic actually underspeeds Groudon and therefore is faster in Trick Room? That's going to be really rough for Patrick, because that Muddy Water is always going to connect thanks to the coil, and if it finds a accuracy drop on top of that, then the Landorus should be able to stay on the field as long as it needs to. It's all going to come down to a little bit of luck here, I think, both for Wahidi and for Patrick.
Oh, as of course, we're going to see a critical hit on the Porygon 2. That is not what you want to see if you're Patrick right now. But no, it does successfully land on the Landorus. That Heat Crash dealing so much damage, in such a valuable asset to this Groudon, which does, of course, as a Pokemon, weigh so much. And in combination with that Sun that comes with the Drought ability, essentially fires away as if it is a stab type boosted move.
Yeah, I always forget that without the Primal Reversion, Groudon is just a ground type. But, honestly, with bringing your own Sun Boost to the field, I feel like that's honorary Fire type status at that point. And it's unfortunate for the Zacian, because that is going to do a nice amount of damage to the Zacian as well. The benefit to that accuracy drop for Wahidi is not only does this Groudon have to sort of make those tough calls, do you go for the attack, are you worried about it missing or not, but if Patrick decides to switch out the Groudon this turn, he most likely will not be able to find time to get those sword stances up once again. So when Groudon does make an appearance back out onto the field, it's going to be significantly weaker. It's a very tough choice for Patrick, but given that the Zacian is still on the field and Groudon will still be slower ultimately, I think you just have to ride it out, go for those Precipice Blades, and just hope that you hit your mark.
As the Groudon's not going to actually go for that just yet. It goes for the Protect, as the Porygon 2 is able to get a recover going for itself, healing back up temporarily to 100% of its health, as Milotic goes for what it has been going for the past few turns. The Muddy Water comes out, but more importantly, that Zacian was able to get away there with a very good play of the Substitute, wanting to essentially guard it for the following turns right now, so it could go ahead and dish out damage when it first can.
Yeah, and if this Porygon 2's foul play is not enough to break the substitute on Zacian, which given that it's a resisted attack, I would assume that it's not, that is a very good play for Wahidi and essentially gives this Zacian the ability to stall out the remainder of the Trick Room turns and possibly even Trick Room being set back up by the Porygon 2 given how healthy it is in the future. A lot of Zacian aren't running substitute anymore. A lot of them have switched back to that 3 attack variant, but this is why you can't try and make an assumption there. You just have to go on the offensive because substitute is still a fantastic move.
As the foul play actually misses its target onto that Milotic, and the Muddy Water, of course, due to those previous coils, does not miss in this scenario right now with those +2 accuracy boosts to stages, picks up the KO onto the Groudon. Trick Room is now over, so very awkward situation. The Charizard, of course, wants to try to go ahead and get rid of the Zacian, but it's quite tough when the Zacian is hidden behind a substitute.
And knowing that you have to take the Muddy Water as well, since you will need 2 turns to break that substitute, is a very tough call. You don't necessarily want to send in Serena yet either, since Serena will not appreciate taking a Behemoth Blade. So I like that the Charizard went out here. I think that if you're in Patrick's shoes, you have to go for an attack to break the sub and then just hope that you can take 2 Muddy Waters. But without Sunlight, that's going to be very difficult.
Yeah,
I guess there is... Yep. Oh, no, go for it. Go for it.
I was going to say, I'm quite surprised that there wasn't a switch out of the Groudon earlier in order to try to bring that Sun back too.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that you have to keep in mind, especially when so much of your offense is built around this Choice Scarf Charizard.
Yeah, as we are going to be seeing the substitute now broken, Behemoth Blade not caring as much as it goes into the Charizard. Whether it's a resist or not, it is susceptible to so much damage from that very, very powerful Zacian, as Muddy Water more than enough to pick up the KO onto the Charizard and force the HP of the Porygon 2 to just whittle away in combination with the burn. Foul play missing yet again, and this Milotic just proving to be too strong right now for Patrick to handle.
The Milotic getting those 2 coils up early on in the game when Patrick was trying to switch around and gain momentum really paid off in dividends. Milotic has been able to just click Muddy Water consistently every single turn, not have to worry about recovery since it hasn't been taking damage at all. Thanks to those defense boosts, and really threatening not only with the damage of Muddy Water, but also with those accuracy drops as well. Going into game 2, I think Patrick's really going to have to look at his approach to this game plan and, you know, make a bit of a more concrete decision. If you do want to start with that Charizard and Groudon, I think you have to be aware of the fact that Weezing can lead into that again and can shut things down quite nicely. And I just don't think that was something he necessarily accounted for, which is why he kept switching around and he fell for the taunt and then he kept switching again, giving Milotic the openings that it needed.
Yeah, and I think Wahidi from their side of the field, like, played it very well. They knew their matchup, what essentially the strategy they had to try to implement in that scenario, and they were able to accomplish it super well. That Weezing put in so much work, just with being able to just neutralize all abilities, even though the Zacian was right next to it, paired up. It doesn't care as much. It's still going to be dealing so much damage. You have the Milotic with the leftovers, coil. You essentially try to shut down your opponent's strategy regardless of what that strategy is, essentially.
Yeah, and we only saw 2 moves on that Milotic as well. You know, we keep thinking that there could be Hypnosis on there, but it might be Ice Beam and Recover. You know, we honestly don't know, and that also has to be something on Patrick's mind as we go into game 2. So I think we should get game 2 started and see what adjustments that these trainers are going to make. And, you know, we have spent a lot of time talking about Patrick. We haven't spent as much time talking about Wahidi. I think if you're Wahidi, you go for a very similar game to game 1, knowing that Weezing has both access to Taunt, Protect, and Will-O-Wisp. And that plus the Zacian gives you a lot of flexibility, since whatever, even if you decide to switch that Zacian out, you know, Weezing is going to be able to get a taunt or a burn or, you know, stall for a little bit of time where it matters. And I think that given how Wahidi's team has a lot more natural bulk than the Pokemon that Patrick brought in game 1, I think that's something that he was able to take advantage of that Patrick didn't quite have the ability to match.
Yeah, Patrick didn't have that, that damage dealer, that high damage dealer, to completely threaten the Milotic there, as it was essentially able to just slowly yet surely run away with it, get those defensive boosts going, just make sure it never misses any muddy waters, and pick up an accuracy drop or two if it can on the way out, which it definitely did, and worked out so well for them. As, of course, we're going to be entering Game 2 right now. We see a change-up of leads from Wahidi's side. The Wheezing, yes, it's still there, but the Milotic is now escorted right next to it, and over on Patrick's side we do see the same leads of the Charizard and the Groudon. No abilities are in play as of turn 1.
That is super curious to me that we actually see the Milotic as a lead from Wahidi. I wonder if he's made the call that this Charizard and this Groudon do not have Solar Beam or any super effective attacks against it. And as a result, he's going to follow the momentum from game 1, go for those 2 coils right off the bat, and then try and just muddy water his way through the next match. You know, once Milotic hit the field in game 1, it did not switch. It just coiled and muddy watered forever. So if that's what he's starting to go for here, seeing that Patrick is really ignoring the Milotic for this turn 1, that could put him at a huge disadvantage from the start.
Yeah, it really, really can, as the Tapu Fini switches in right now for the Groudon. Overheat comes out from the Charizard, correctly recognizing, of course, that the Weezing needs to go for Patrick's strategy to be able to pay off here, as the Taunt actually goes into the Tapu Fini. There, no Will-O-Wisp, surprisingly, from the Weezing, as, like you said, Gabby, the Milotic is just starting to set itself up right now, so we're already approaching dangerous area for Patrick in this game too.
We are, and to see Patrick switch that Charizard out once again, I almost wonder if you go for the second overheat, knowing that it may miss, knowing that if it doesn't miss, it's probably going to do enough damage to KO that Weezing. The taunt play there was, I think, just covering for the Porygon 2 switch in, though would have had the nice side effect of the Groudon not being able to protect this turn and Weezing being able to secure a burn, or Milotic being able to secure damage on it. So again, a bit of a slower start for Wahidi, but the fact that he was able to get 1 out of the 2 coils he's looking for and essentially not be punished for it is huge in this game too.
And like you correctly pointed out, the Charizard actually did want to try to stay in. It tried to focus down on the Weezing, but was only met with a Protect, as, ooh, we see the Nature's Madness, but immediately followed by a Hypnosis. Here is the reveal. It had a chance, of course, to still miss, although it was definitely increased from having 0 accuracy stages increased onto the Milotic, and was quite successful in picking up that sleep.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not in this situation, that Hypnosis should have landed, so that's really good for Wahidi, and the fact that he was able to connect it as well to Tapu Fini while Weezing was still on the field meant that there was no misty terrain to protect it from getting that status, so very, very well played there, and I think correctly sort of prioritizing, yes, this may be a chance, but there could be something about this Tapu Fini that I just don't know going into this game 2. This is the adjustment that Patrick's made as far as I can tell. Therefore, I should put it to sleep so that it won't stop my plans. And knowing that it carries Nature's Madness as well, that really puts Tapu Fini into a position where it can be one of these larger attackers for Patrick and put Milotic in range of some of the bigger knockout moves. So that's a key strategy that Patrick just lost access to.
And with Weezing leaving the field, that does mean, of course, all abilities on the field from the current Pokemon are in effect, as it switched up for the Landorus Incarnate, and over on Patrick's side, we see the Tapu Fini switch out for the Groudon, which means the Overheat now is boosted both by the Sun and Solar Power. Oh, it does so much damage. It doesn't quite pick up a KO, but you have to remember, this Charizard was already at -2 of its special attack, just showing how ferocious of a damage output that Pokemon really is able to exert, as we do see the second coil now being set up from this Milotic, recovering over time with the leftovers, of course.
You have to wonder how much damage Groudon is going to be able to do now to the Milotic, knowing that it has not been burned. The Precipice Blades here, I think, would be the best pick. You could go for a Heat Crash if you wanted to ensure the knockout on the Landorus, but I guess on the other hand, though, you don't have the speed control on your side of the field yet, so Groudon still going to be forced to be in a bit of a passive position until that Landorus is removed from the field or until Porygon 2 makes an appearance.
Yes, we're going to be seeing the Charizard now opting to switch out for the Porygon 2. It wants to be kept in the back for being able to get that further damage output in future turns, as the Protect comes out from the Landorus here, followed, should I say, by this Groudon. And we're just seeing the Milotic actually revealing a new move that it hasn't actually shown just yet, that Icy Wind. So a form of speed control there, while still being able to get some super effective chip damage onto the Groudon. But of course it had Protected, and the Porygon 2 doesn't mind being slowed down, as its a main priority right now may be Trick Room, perhaps.
I think both these Pokemon don't necessarily mind being slowed down, but the big question is, you know, we saw Patrick make another risky play, leaving that Groudon in. I think if I were in Wahidi's position, assuming that this Milotic is going to go for Hypnosis onto the Porygon 2 because, or no, it can't do that because of Misty Terrain.
Yeah.
Assuming that the Landorus is still going to move first and still going to attack, if Groudon is unable to take this, which it can very comfortably thanks to the Citrus Berry as well, this could be the turning point for Patrick and getting the advantage in this game.
Oh, Patrick opts to go for Swords Dance with this Groudon. It cannot be burned as the Mist Terrain is on the field. It cannot be put to sleep as of yet, but it is now at +2 of its special attack, of its physical attack, apologies. Muddy Water does come out. Of course, it connects on both Pokemon. No accuracy drops right there that Wahidi may have been fishing for, but at this point, Wahidi feels quite comfortable just trying to get those Muddy Waters off overall, as the leftovers combination with it is just so powerful at +2 of its defense.
It is, and Milotic, again, just like in Game 1, is in a comfortable spot to remain on the field and continuously click Muddy Water for the rest of the game. And this Groudon, even with the help of the Sun, really only has 1 or 2 turns left in it. 1 turn if both the Milotic and the Landorus find an attack this turn. 2 turns if the Milotic is left on its own devices to hit those Muddy Waters. So even though Patrick was able to get Trick Room up a bit more comfortably than what we saw in Game 1, I still think that this Groudon is at a disadvantage given how much pressure this Milotic has. You also have to keep in mind that as soon as the Misty Terrain is gone, you still have to start worrying about being put to sleep as well.
Yeah, as the Landorus goes for that Protect right now, they'll be able to avoid. I'm not sure if that was a double Protect. I may have been miscounting there. But more importantly, the Foul Play was trying to target it from the Porygon 2. It failed, but the Muddy Water did not fail, getting an accuracy drop on that Groudon, which may come into play right now, as it does not actually fail. It correctly connects onto the Milotic, deals so much damage, even, of course, at +2 of its defense due to that previous Swords Dance there, essentially neutralizing the differential of the stages.
And that Landorus hadn't gone for a Protect prior, so if you think back to Game 1, we did have the opportunity to see how much a Foul Play would do to that Landorus, and I don't think it will be enough to pick up the knockout from this range. So if Wahidi remembers that detail, I think you keep the Landorus and hope that you don't get a critical hit, and just hope that you're able to find the Muddy Water damage or the Precipice Blades miss that you need to keep Milotic in this game.
Ooh, we're going to be seeing the Landorus, though, switch out now, bringing the neutralizing gas ability out to play, as Foul Play comes out from the Porygon 2 and is enough with a critical hit as well to pick up the KO. So the moment that Wheezing came in, it immediately left. And if the Zacian was on the field, we would have seen a very funny little interaction of Intrepid Sword there. But of course we don't, as the Muddy Water will quite shyly miss the KO onto the Groudon. But guess what? It picks up double accuracy stat drops, which force this Groudon's Precipice Blades to actually miss.
I was going to say, I don't think Precipice Blades can hit at the double accuracy drop, but that might be a little bit of my own skepticism from personal experiences. But, you know, Milotic has gotten into the spot where it wants to be now. Not only is Groudon unable effectively to deal damage to it, Misty Terrain has left the field, and it will have the opportunity to go for a Hypnosis onto either of these 2 Pokemons. And if Patrick decides to switch one out so so that the Tapu Fini can come into play, he's going to be giving up, the Porygon 2's position on the field under Trick Room. The Groudon might just be left out to take damage from the Zacian or the Milotic Muddy Water again. It's a tough spot, I think, for Patrick to be in, and it's unfortunate that he was able to find that Trick Room, again, a lot easier than in Game 1, but is still struggling to pick up momentum thanks to the presence of the Milotic.
Yeah, this is definitely tough for Patrick, as he's going to opt to switch the Tapu Fini now in, bringing the Mist Terrain, which of course will mean no Hypnosis, at least for another 4 to 5 turns. Foul Play comes out, deals respectable damage onto that Zacian, which of course does resist, as the Milotic is not stopping right now. It just wants more accuracy drops whilst getting that chip damage. It's not able to do so in that turn for both the Porygon 2 and the Tapu Fini, but the Zacian is going to be able to successfully get a substitute up and going.
And now that we've seen how much damage Foul Play can do to Zacian, we know that it's not going to be enough alone to break that substitute. So Zacian has its pick. It can go for Behemoth Blade into Porygon 2 or Tapu Fini. It could maybe choose a different attacking move. That's going to be, I think, a really beneficial spot for Wahidi, and is able to continue to stall out the remainder of this Trick Room so that Zacian can start attacking with the speed advantage once it's over.
As the Zacian just wants to go ahead, get that Protect going, and wants to try to stall out these turns of Trick Room. Porygon 2 actually opts to go for the Recover here. Makes a lot of sense. You want to try to get your Porygon 2 to be as healthy as possible to add to that longevity in this game too, as the Muddy Water once again coming out right now, and of course connecting on both. Are there any accuracy drops? Wow, there are. There's another accuracy drop on the Porygon 2. Now it's at -2 stages, so it may be a candidate to switch out right now, as Tapu Fini does burn off its first guaranteed turn of sleep. So little moves access, of course, visual that we've got on the Tapu Fini is that haze, which I feel may be quite crucial in trying to get rid of this Milotic, which is completely buffed out.
I definitely, and not only would you be able to, remove the accuracy buffs and the defense boosts that the Milotic has, you'll also be able to remove the accuracy drops on the Porygon 2. And even though Foul Play isn't going to be dealing a ton of damage, you still want your Porygon 2's attacks to connect. I think that Porygon 2 could get pretty far in this game, even if it never attacked again, just alternating Trick Room and Recover, and I don't know, maybe an Eerie Impulse or a missing Foul Play, so you don't have to worry about activating competitive. But if Wahidi correctly makes the prediction that Tapu Fini has haze, which is common when they're running Nature's Madness, and is able to double up into it for the knockout here, I think he'll secure his slot at victory.
Oh, we've got the first Pokemon attacking here. That Behemoth Blade dealing so much damage. Not quite enough to pick up the KO, but my word, was that powerful, as Tapu Fini fails to wake up, which it's so desperately needed to there. As the Muddy Water will be connecting, doesn't pick up a KO on the Tapu Fini, so there still is hope. I'd say there's still hope. You see the accuracy drop there, and no Trick Room being set up. The Foul Play just goes ahead and misses, unfortunately, to break a potential substitute.
And that is just unfortunate. I think icing on the cake for Wahidi. The Tapu Fini staying asleep there means that the Zacian will have the opportunity to go for that last Behemoth Blade to deal damage to the Tapu Fini. I think that if Patrick wants to find an out in this situation, his only hope is to go for that second Trick Room on the Porygon 2 and hope that Foul Play would be enough to stop this Milotic, or maybe somehow hope that the Groudon could deal enough damage to that Milotic to knock it out, as this Tapu Fini is definitely going down.
Yeah, Zacian not taking any prisoners today, as Fini is down for the count, and this Milotic, yes, ladies and gents, goes for yet another Muddy Water. It's single target right now, and doesn't pick up another accuracy drop, but guess what? Porygon 2 decided to get its spectacles on. It lands and is able to break that substitute there with the Foul Play, dealing enough damage to do so. So at least the substitute is broken right now, but Wahidi is just still so much in control right now, given the fact that the Milotic, of course, with every passing turn, is able to recover that tiny bit more of HP.
And every passing turn as well, able to deal a little bit more chip damage with Muddy Water. It cannot be stated enough, and I think that's why we keep coming back to this point about how much pressure the Milotic has on the field for Wahidi throughout Game 1 and Game 2, thanks to the presence of Coil, Muddy Water, and Hypnosis. Patrick does still have access to Charizard, and who will be able to outspeed and get one attack down before the Milotic is able to attack and possibly put it to sleep, as it is a flying type Pokemon and does not make contact with the misty terrain. So really all Wahidi has to do to maintain his advantage here is protect the Zacian this turn, go for Hypnosis on the Milotic, and even if Patrick is able to connect a Overheat plus a Foul Play from that Porygon 2 into the Milotic slot, you know, I don't think it's going to be knocked out, and the Charizard will be forced to take that turn of mandatory sleep next turn, at which point the Zacian can go for an attack or possibly even set up a second substitute. So it's a tough spot for Patrick to be in, and I think that's reflected by the choice of move on the Charizard, hoping for a flinch rather than for a knockout, since stopping the Milotic is the best thing that he can hope for in this game.
Oh, here we go. So, of course, anticipating the protect, but no, unfortunately, no flinch for Patrick there. Wahidi absolutely capitalizing off of momentum from those previous coils. Does, of course, guarantee that sleep there, and more importantly, this Charizard is going to have to be forced to sleep even during the next turn. It has to burn that off, as Porygon 2 right now, quite literally a sitting duck, not able to do as much as it'd like to.
And that's the unfortunate thing about running these Foul Play Eerie Impulse sets, is that while Porygon 2's Eerie Impulse is super helpful against special attackers, you can't run it against Milotic when it has competitive, since that will only boost its special attack up. And on the other hand, Foul Play just is going to struggle to find damage against Pokemon like Zacian or Milotic. So Wahidi not even worried about the Charizard this turn, just going for the guaranteed KO on Porygon 2 with close combat, knowing that Milotic's Muddy Water is enough to seal the game.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my lord, the Charizard's just going to be able to survive there on 4 HP, but it's a little too late at this point. Wahidi just absolutely rompers through this game, has been playing so well, and just slowly yet surely has been wearing down all of Patrick's Pokemon. Unfortunately for Patrick, he just hasn't had a way to break that Milotic. There may have been, of course, a scenario of getting the haze, but you saw the interaction of that turn 2, I believe, where the Tapu Fini was immediately put to sleep right before its mist terrain was even able to allow itself to get onto the field there.
Yeah, and that's the brilliance of bringing a Pokemon like Cantoni and Weezing in this exact situation. I think Wahidi saw Patrick's team at Team Preview and correctly identified that the Misty Terrain was the only way that Patrick had from stopping a Hypnosis, and I think also correctly calling that would be a concern of Patrick's after what happened in Game 1 with those 2 coils and then Milotic just staying on the field. Yep. And, you know, it's definitely an interesting thing to look at in retrospect, because you would assume that the Serena would have had enough pressure on its own to take out that Milotic if it were a different situation, but the way that Wahidi played that team just meant that the Serena never had a chance, and Patrick was forced to adapt as a result. Unfortunately, it did not work out for him. I think that, you know, while Milotic was fantastic in this matchup, you do have to be careful around other matchups, such as Regieleki, for example, where it wouldn't have the same opportunity to shine. But a great call by Wahidi going into this game, like just recognizing that opportunity and taking complete advantage of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Cantoni and Weezing, like you mentioned as well, it just put in so much work. The fact that you're able to shut down very ability-centric Pokemon, such as like Groudon, Charizard, even Tapu Fini, just absolutely, you know, you get the carpet swept under your feet if you're that trainer. In this case, Patrick, where you can't play like you normally would. You have to try to change up your strategy in anticipation of this tank of a Milotic, or whether having Zacian on the side dealing so much damage as well. Wahidi honestly shows that they were very comfortable with their team in this matchup as well, and they were able to play flawlessly, in my opinion, there. Being able to go ahead and secure that 8-0 win versus Ireland. Of course, huge congrats to Malaysia. I think this may even mean that they've just gone straight into top 16 thanks to this amazing result on their side of the field. They have 2 wins out essentially from this second week going into the final week, so huge congratulations to them. Whilst Ireland, on the other hand, they are not out just yet. Of course, this was a very tough loss that they had to essentially go through. I'm sure they will try their best to bring it back, but they still have a chance. They've got to go up against Guatemala and ensure they could get a very huge win, whilst the US may get, they have to lose, I think, because right now the US is in the lead 7-0 to Guatemala in week 2. So very, very tough, but not impossible.
Yeah, I think you summed it up very well, Costa, and it'll be curious to see how these matches are going to play out, because we really are down to the wire here on week 2, as I believe competitors only have a few more hours to get those match results in. And we have a couple more matches to stream too, so why don't we take a quick break and get right along to our next match. We're going to get that set up and we'll be right back, so please stay tuned, everybody.